Hello everybody. Today I want to talk about how we help strong-willed kids accept not getting their way. So this is something that comes up a lot for all kids, but particularly for strong-willed kids because they're the least likely to kind of accept that we can take it in turns, that I've had enough of getting my way and now it's your turn, or that kind of thing. They're the ones that struggle the most with being able to let go of the idea that they are fixated on. And if we think about what we tend to try when this comes up, is the first thing we try to do is try to convince them that our way would work. So this is when we start thinking, well, can you just be reasonable for 5 freaking seconds? And we try to do things like we explain to them how what we would like to do would work for them. And that doesn't really get anywhere because from their perspective, their way would work too. And so why wouldn't we just go with their way? And so it feels like an arbitrary them having to give up what they need just because they're the kid, or for some other arbitrary reason. And so it really just doesn't help them to let go of this idea that I have to have it my way. Everything has to go the way that I say it should. So that really doesn't help them kind of let go of that. And then the second thing that we try to do is we try to get them to be okay with not getting what they want as often. And this is we do this in really good intentions. What we're really trying to say is that sometimes you don't get exactly what you want, but overall, we have a nice life and really it's okay to get less of what you want. And I got to tell you, even just saying those words out loud, my tummy tightens up. Because from my perspective, why would we want to teach our children to go for less? Why would we want them to just be like, it's okay for you to just not get what you want and what you need? And, as I say these words out loud, I'm sure that there are some of you that are thinking, well, that's just the way life works. And I would argue that it doesn't need to. I would argue that in our society, we spend so much time trying to get people to accept what is reasonable, and we don't spend enough time looking at what are the solutions that would work for everybody. And so I think that there's a difference between a person, and I think this is part of the messaging we've all grown up with, is that if you're a person who wants more, then you're also a person who's not going to cope when things don't go your way. And that comes up for us when we're helping our strong-willed kids. It's like, you're going to need to be able to cope with things not going your way in life. That's an important experience to be comfortable with. But in these examples that are happening with our kids, and many of the examples that are happening when we're adults, it's actually not the case that we have to accept that we should not get what we want. In most of the cases, if we focus on solving a problem in a way that works for everybody, there are other solutions and we just don't notice them because we're so focused on, sometimes it's speed. It's like we don't want to leave something undone long enough for us to be creative to solve the problem. And sometimes it's just a simple matter of life is so busy and fast paced and we've got to do this and we've got to do that. And so there's no time to really dig in and solve a problem effectively. We're just like, you should be okay with this. And therefore we could all move on if you would be okay with that. And sometimes we say it in a really nice tone and really nice words, and sometimes we say it really not very nice. But the underlying message is basically, this is reasonable and rational, let's move on, rather than let's explore how this could work for everybody involved. The last thing that happens is that we don't notice that our kids, when they're fixated on one particular thing that they need to get their way, they are focused on one strategy. But underneath that strategy that they're focused on is a need of theirs that they're trying to get met. And so when we think about them as stubborn, as digging their heels in, or unwilling to budge, any of those phrases that basically say, you're being uncooperative, that tells us that they're focused on a strategy. And instead of us going, well, hang on a second, sweetie, we can solve this thing that you need in a million different ways. And maybe the way that you're suggesting isn't going to work, but there might be a way that can work for both of us. we stay at the level that they're at, right? Like, we're like, well, no, you can't have, the pink shoes because they're not closed in, and at daycare you need to wear closed in shoes. And so we just are like, you need to accept you can't have the shoes and move on. We don't notice what is driving the deep desire for those shoes, and how can we meet that in a different way. It also involves closed-toe shoes because that's what they need to wear at daycare. And so this is kind of the patterns that we end up in. So let's talk about what we can do instead. So the first thing we want to do is get them clear on exactly why they want what they want. So when they're demanding the shoes, when they are refusing to eat the dinner, when they are only wanting to control the play and not letting their siblings or their friends to participate in like really sculpting the play, then we want to start with what is driving this, what is underneath this. And the first responses I sometimes get from parents is things like they just like to control, or it's just their favorite and they just want to get what their favorite is. Like, it's that kind of surface level stuff. We're not digging further into where this is coming from. You'll know you've gone deep enough if what you say about what it is they need sounds like something that's really, really valid. It sounds like something that's reasonable and fair. It's something that makes sense that they would want it. And then we need to look at what is in the way of them getting that. So if we look at the shoe examples, like they really want to wear their pink shoes, but the pink shoes are not closed in. When we're looking at, so sweetie, can you tell me, why are the pink shoes really important to you? Why do you want those ones and not any other shoe? When you get down into, well, I actually just don't want to go to daycare, right? Or the pink shoes, I want to show them off to my friends because I want them to be excited about my shoes, right? So there's something underneath there that might be their comfort, it might be their connection with other people, it might be any of these things, it could be. But until we know what is the issue, then it allows us to go, okay, well, what's in the way? So if we follow that line of thought of they wanted to show their friends their pink shoes because they're really excited that they got them, well, then the question becomes, what's in the way of that? Could they wear the closed-toe shoes and take the pink shoes with them? You may say no because you don't want them to get lost. Well, let's say that, right? Or you may say no because if you take them to daycare and the educators then have to make sure that the kids are not putting them on all day because they're not appropriate shoes for school, then you can say that. That then becomes, it's when the message to our child is not, you need to accept when you can't get what you want. It's not, you need to want less. It's not, you're just fixated on your way. We're actually giving the real reason. And sometimes you might not have a reason to say no. Like, once you really understand what's going on, you may have a reason to change your mind, or you may have a way to just slightly tweak the plan, and then it can work. Now, if you don't, then there's that piece of explaining the real reason in this moment why we can't do it. So in that rationale piece, we often as parents look for long-term arbitrary things. So we'll say things like, everybody needs to be responsible for themselves, or we don't want to take things outside of the house that we're not using right now. These are all just arbitrary blanket statements. We want to use concrete, real-time, what's happening now, why can I not say yes to what they're asking for? And that will really help your child to accept that this is not arbitrary, that you have a genuine reason for not agreeing with them. But here's the thing, it also gives them all the information they need to find a solution that works. They are younger than us, so they are more creative. They have more time than us because they do not have the 1 million things that us parents have on our to-do list. And they are more motivated because for them, this is something that's really important to them. Whereas for us, they're like, I need to hold the boundary. It'll be great if we can find a way that works for you, but really, I'm not that committed to you taking your shoes to see your friends, right? So they have these 3 factors that make them much better placed to find a solution, and it gives them confidence in their ability to make decisions, right? But if we don't give them that concrete, real-time, this is what is in the way of you getting what you want, then they don't have all the information they need in order to find that alternative solution. So then, if we assume you didn't get to a place where there was an obvious solution and everyone can be happy, the next thing we want to do is make sure that we make it clear that your intention is for them to get what they want. So it's as simple as, I always use this example because I think it really illustrates the point, is like if their child says, I want ice cream for dinner, if we were to say, I really want you to get what you want, but I can't do it, it sounds like, well, no, of course I don't want you to have ice cream for dinner, right? But if we get really clear on why we don't want them to have ice cream for dinner, and no judgment if you do ice cream for dinner as a treat sometimes, I'm not saying that you should never do it, but I'm just talking about regular everyday dinners. If we get really clear on what's in the way, if you explain, I really want you to have what you want, but I can't let you have ice cream for dinner because it's so much sugar just before bedtime, or that's so much sugar in your system and it gets in the way of you eating the foods that your body needs to make your hair and your fingernails and, whatever age appropriate explanation you're giving, then we really want to, once we've given that specific actual reason, it makes sense to say, yeah, if I could give you ice cream that didn't have that consequence, I would do it. Because you would, right? If you could give them ice cream that had the nutrition that their body needed, that wasn't going to interrupt their sleep, that wasn't going to give them a sugar crash, like whatever particular things are important to you about the ice cream, if you could give them something that tasted exactly the way they wanted it to taste and it didn't have those consequences that you didn't want, you would do it. And so that's where we need to get to, is that real, I'm on your team, your needs matter. I want you to get what you want. I just can't give you this because. And it's a real concrete example. And then the last step is if you cannot find a way and they're still really sad, that's the time where we reflect how they're feeling and just allow the feelings to be. It is okay for them to be sad. Like, it is okay for them to be sad that they can't get what they want. It is okay for them to be disappointed. It's okay for them to be frustrated or angry when they really, really want something and we can't find a way, either together or just them. If they can't find a way to get what they want, it's okay to have big feelings about that. And it's the practice of, we've tried everything we can in the time we have available and there's just no obvious solution. It's the practice of experiencing that and allowing the feelings to be what they are. That's the juice. That's the magic in becoming a person who is able to accept, not getting my way this time. If we've gone through this process where we've really gotten clear on what they want, we've gotten really clear on why they can't have it, we have made it clear that we are on the same team and you really want them to have what they want if you could, and then they're just sad and disappointed or frustrated or angry, any of those things, if they're just allowed to have those feelings, that's where the resilience comes from, right? Because we've been through those processes that make them feel complete, they make them feel heard, they make it feel like they matter. All of those things make it easier for us to accept, that sucks, I can't have what I want this time. And the more they get to do that, the quicker those feelings will be processed, which makes life easier for everybody. So this has been like a very quick run through of how we get our strong-willed kids to accept when they can't get their way. I'm actually going to be going through some of the practical strategies in much more depth about how we get our strong-willed kids to listen in a webinar that's coming up. If you wanted to go ahead and register for that, it's jodiethornton.com/listen. That will get you registered for the next webinar. We're going to go through all of those steps that I just went through. We're going to go through, how do you actually do those practically? Like, how do you get them to get clear on why the shoes are important? Sometimes it's pretty simple and obvious, and sometimes it's not. We're also going to talk about how do you express what they need to do in a way that is less likely to kind of trigger their oppositional or defiant side. And we're going to go through what are the strategies you can use to keep your cool when it doesn't work, because we know that kids are not robots. It's just not going to work 100% of the time. The more often you do it, the more practice you are, the better chance you have. But there are going to be times where nothing works. And so we want to have those strategies to really feel like, we're okay. We don't need to escalate. Nobody needs to lose their cool over this. So I'm going to be going through all of that in the webinar, and you can catch that at jodithornton.com/listen. If you have any questions about today, please do send me an email, jody@jodithornton.com, and I cannot wait to see you.